Hello and welcome to another Warcraft 3 audio commentary. This will be a 4 versus 4 game, and the map is going to be Sanctuary. One of the, I think it's a new map, one I'm not very familiar with for 4v4 random team. But at any rate, this is going to be a game where I am Elf, the teal elf player here. And on the other team, there were two human players, an undead player, and a random player. So I had the idea of going for a Panda rush, hopefully getting some of my allies to agree to it and join me for this, because I feel like the Panda is, if you can get 2 or 3 Pandas or even 4 Pandas to rush a human player, typically, or a team that has multiple human players preferably, so you can, have at least 2 or more targets in terms of humans to attack, that's generally going to, I think, be very effective, because humans a lot of times will like to fast expand. Sometimes they will leave their base a little bit open, and or they will get a delayed or not at all, either get a delayed arcane tower or not get one at all. So and footman, militia, archmage, these are fairly, especially if you're aggressively militia creeping or expanding, they're going to be very susceptible to Breath of Fire. Normally a lot of human players will feel secure that they can pull, 6 militia to defend themselves, but if you're hitting, those 6 militia with, 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4 shots of Breath of Fire, typically you're really only going to need 3, and you can pretty much kill those peasants. I don't know if 3 Breath of Fires alone does the job, but it definitely will get you, maybe you just have to hit them like once or something like that. So that's really the theory behind it. In this game, I don't actually convince my allies to do it. Nobody else joins me, which is very unfortunate. I still try to harass with the Panda. Nobody else comes with their hero or anything like that, so bad news for me. I'd scouted pretty much everybody on their team, and I saw that they had 2 undeads. The humans were on the edges. Both of the human main bases looked somewhat like they were going to get walled off, and you will notice that orange and blue did wall their bases, but orange is going for the fast expansion militia creeping. Blue isn't doing it yet, but he does later on go for a fast expansion as well. So basically, either of these, ideally would be going for orange, which is actually the one I end up going for, mostly because I'm on the bottom and orange is also on the bottom. But the timing for hitting blue with a bunch of pandas would be a little bit different. Now, I guess if we could just stop this arcane vault going up, then his base would not be walled off. But blue actually he has 2 scout towers as well, so it looks like he will probably have an arcane tower, at least one, to fend us off if we were to go to his main base at a certain point. But anyway, the ideal target here would be orange's expansion. That is actually exactly where I'm going to end up going with my Panda. I know one Panda alone is it's very unlikely that I can do very much to a walled off human base. Even if it's not walled off, just one Panda doesn't really, it's not the same threat, because the cooldown, I can't, to hit him with 3 Breath of Fires is going to be a lot of cooldown, and I'm probably just going to get like surrounded, or he's going to have an arcane vault, or he just calls to arms, and I take so much damage that if I get off 3 Breath of Fires, I'm probably going to have to either TP or lose my hero here. So anyway, I come on this expansion. I've got green and orange defending. I'm getting off a couple of Breath of Fires, but like I said, look at how much damage I've taken already. I've taken about 300 damage on my Panda. If we had 2 or 3 Pandas here, we could with just one other Panda, we could have done, basically this amount of damage in the first volley of Breath of Fire. So we wouldn't have hardly taken any damage. And if we had a third Panda, we probably could have killed all these peasants, could have stopped this completely, and barely taken any damage. Just green coming in there wouldn't be, it wouldn't be just sort of good game for my harass, But as it went, that didn't happen. Now it looks like green is going to end up losing a fiend creeping, so that's just absurd, really bad play. But But anyway, Orange gets this expansion up. I want to go back to it, and Orange was he chased me quite a bit there, and he ran around this way, and I ran into him. So it was pretty difficult for me to get back over here without taking any damage, but I did. I should have hit this tower with Breath of Fire. I missed it, so that was a little bit unfortunate, but I do kill at least 2 peasants here, I think. Let's see if I get any more. There's probably an argument to be made for just sacking my hero here instead of running around, because it's pretty unlikely that I was going to escape. And again, as you see, I didn't. So I probably should have just stayed there and took my chances, lost the hero, got the Breath of Fire on the workers. I probably could have killed at least 1 more worker, maybe 2. Oh, and also I was throwing up an Ancient of War here. A little bit sad that I didn't like watch the replay with Blue's perspective on and fog off, because I thought this would have been out of the sight range of his towers and stuff. I was actually not quite sure it was going to be out of range of out of the aggro range of these creeps, but it turns out it was. I was paying close attention when I built it, but then Blue sort of found it, and that's unfortunate. It could have been, if the Ancient of War gets up, it could have been very annoying for Blue. You know, it's much easier to stop the Ancient of War when it's constructing than when it actually finishes and can, you know, uproot, eat trees, hit you for 50 damage a shot, and stuff like that. But anyway, we've got Blue here, or sorry, not Blue. We've got Pink here going into Orange's main base. Wow, this is. He probably should get this Shredder kill. I don't know if he does. I don't remember exactly what all he goes for. Okay, he's going to stop this Arcane Vault. Probably going to cancel it. Hopefully he can kill that Shredder. That's actually a pretty expensive target. I don't know exactly how much experience you get for killing a Shredder, but again, it's going to really hurt his lumber income. That's 375 gold for that unit, 100 wood, a 4-food unit. It doesn't look like he even is going to go for it, though, unfortunately. It's only got 101 hit points. It does have 3 armor, but I would have really preferred that he would have killed that if he could, but he probably just didn't notice it at any rate. But I don't know exactly how many of the Orange players' units he killed. Pink did lose like all of his footmen though, and he's ahead on experience compared to Orange, but now it's, you know, the levels are the same, so he's losing now. But it looks like he must have killed some workers too, I guess. I don't know. It looks like Orange must have lost some workers. So maybe that's just what he was focusing. But anyway, I'll go back to my base and point out I actually was fast teching with no tier 1 production build. Well, I didn't build any Ancients of Wars, Archers, Huntresses, and I decided I was just going to fast tech into Master Druids of the Talon as quickly as I can. So we're at the 8-minute mark, and I am just about tier 3 here. I don't know if I'm like ahead of anybody. It looks like I'm for sure ahead of green. Yeah, I'm ahead of yellow. You know, Blue and Orange were going for expansion, so I can sort of see why I'd be ahead of them. The undead players, well, yellow got an expansion also, so economically the opponents are crushing us right now. They have 3 expansions. We have only got 1. Well, no, we've got 2, so it's not quite as bad as I thought. And now purple's getting 1 up, so we were sort of behind for a bit, and now it looks like we're in okay shape. When purple gets his expansion rolling, we'll be in okay shape in terms of economy. But yeah, you know, my plan is to get Cyclone really quick before they have a great counter to it. Again, good counters would be Spellbreakers. They're really good counters against dots. And Destroyers, from the undead perspective, are going to be really good counters. Now, green actually has thrown up an expansion, but I think we do cancel or destroy this here in a second. So me, pink, and red are sort of together. I don't know if red's going to join us. I think he does. So we're going to head towards green's expansion, and at this moment none of the enemy players have any sort of dispel. Also Adept Priests can dispel Cyclone, but again, I'd probably just prefer to have mass Spellbreakers. I didn't want to quite reveal my Cyclone, so I don't know if they saw that I had mass dots yet. They're not master level just yet. I'm getting the upgrade right now. It's just about done. So when this battle happens, should be pretty good. So, and yeah, it's pretty important to get the Panda at least to level 2 and 3 at this stage. So anyway, I'm pulling back. I've got orange following me. He's got a bunch of footmen. So actually, his army is terrible for fighting me. No dispel. Um, I didn't cyclone quite quick enough to stop them from getting off like Breath of Fire and stuff. But again, look, the footmen, the water elemental, they're going to get pounded here. I'm just going to cyclone his heroes as much as I can because those are, you know, the things I can't really deal with very easily. I don't want to get hit with Breath of Fire too much. Again, him popping out water elementals is not going to be great. You know, when he's got footmen still going. So again, I cyclone stuff, and now I'm going to go. You know, I'm just going to keep him up in the air right now. Again, I've got a lot of low hit point Druza Talon. One more Breath of Fire is going to be sort of problematic for me, so I want to avoid that as much as I can. And I do a pretty good job, and I come back over here to the my allies, and somebody, Pink, really good teamwork there, actually getting off a perfect heal spray right on all my Druza Talon. So, you know, even if Pink gets off another Breath of Fire, it's not going to completely abolish me. So I got to give props to Pink there. That was really good. And again, the Alchemist is, I got to say, the Alchemist should be a really strong hero in this patch. Barring any other changes or them taking back some of the buffs that he got. He again, even before the buffs, I thought he was a viable hero. Slightly weak at level 1, and again, heal spray, not really ideal, honestly, but, you know, because it could heal enemy units and stuff, so it was a lot harder to use in battle. But now, not only is heal spray not doing that, it doesn't heal enemy stuff anymore, but they also buffed the movement speed of the Alchemist, and they buffed Acid Bomb, so they pretty much buffed him on, I mean, all of his skills except for Chemical Rage got buffed, and Chemical Rage didn't get touched, but I thought it was still, and still is, a fair skill. It's only 25 mana to substantially buff his movement and attack speed even more, which has good synergy with Acid Bomb. It has good synergy with his high attack, his high DPS, his base attack. But anyway, we're going to destroy that expansion. Again, I pretty much rocked orange. Now I've got red here pressuring orange's main. I don't really like this idea. It looked like he was about to kill orange's hero though, so that's not a terrible idea, I guess. But going into this base with towers, with Wind Riders, that's a little bit risky. I think it would be easier just to go for blue like we're doing here. Again, I'm cycloning everything. These priests are not adept level yet, I don't think. Yeah, they're only initiate, so it's not really a big deal. And I was trying to cyclone them anyway. But yeah, we go for blue here, cycloning the stuff I feel is a threat, and then killing the stuff that's not a threat. Forced yellow to TP, forced blue to TP. After he lost, blue really didn't lose all that much, honestly. I think yellow was the one who ended up losing whatever mostly he had. I think it was mostly banking gold anyway, though. He's banking to get all these. He's got 3 boneyards to mass up frostworms, 2-0 frostworms. So that's a pretty scary threat, except for the fact that we are mass piercing and magic damage. And I'm going to go ahead and add some, mostly for the casters, but also going to be very useful against the frostworms. I'm going to add fairy dragons to the equation. They're magic immune, so they're not getting touched by frostworms. They're flying, so they're not getting touched by any melee hero with, without the ability to hit air, of course. Pretty much all of them, and no orbs. I guess with the web, it's that's not the case, but and then they do piercing damage, which is going to be strong against the frostworms. So now blue TP's in, and you see this is where the mana flare is coming in. Blue has a lot of casters. He's got the priest on auto cast. He probably had the sorceresses on auto cast slow, priest auto cast healing, and they were just getting popped, with mana flare. Boom, boom, boom. They're all clustered together. Easy stuff there. My Panda looks like he's he's taking a lot of damage. I got to be very careful here. I could have very easily gotten caught there. But and yeah, I fly these. I flew these Druid of Talent in crow form over, and I was going for, there were some mortar teams back here I wanted to get to, so that was the plan there, to try to avoid them getting hammered. And yellow did not TP to defend, so that was a sort of miscommunication, bad decision making on somebody's part, whether it was the blue and orange or for not getting out, or yellow for not getting in. But they probably really did need to save orange's main to have any hope here. His economy mostly was the big draw, about 9,500 gold there. losing that, you know, for the rest of the game, and plus his tech was going to be a pretty big problem. And again, the next target is going to be pretty easy. Orange's expansion. Again, now at this point, after blue got you know, sort of wiped, orange got wiped, green, I guess green TP too. So green got, you know, lost a lot, and now yellow's going to TP in and defend this by himself, which against just red, yeah, sure, he can do it. But then when me and pink join in, pink doesn't really have a ton of anti-air. He's got some casters. He doesn't have polymorph. I don't know if he plans to yet. It doesn't look like he plans to get it. Actually, he's getting the Master's Priest upgrade. Polymorph would be awesome right here, even though he's only got 3 sorceresses. But yeah, you know, he does have some casters. He's gonna have Inner Fire. We've got mass 2/2 Hieroglyph Riders. We've got you know, sort of a medium amount of 1/2 Wind Riders. I've got, you know, Fairy Dragons. I've got Cyclone. I can go Crow form. I've got Fairy Fire. Mass Dodge, basically. The Panda's at level 5, almost level 6. Drunken Haze, Breath of Fire is going to be amazing against pretty much anything that's not magic immune. It doesn't look like they have any kind of well, they have Adept Priest, so I guess they can dispel Drunken Haze. They will have Master Priest. They will have Polymorph, even though blue, I don't see any sorceresses from blue, so that's a little bit odd. He wouldn't get the sorceresses first, but either way, I don't think they're going to be able to handle us now at this point. Again, I can actually just Cyclone all the priests before he can dispel, and then, you know, just go in. Now we need to figure out what we want to attack. It's generally a bad idea to attack into an undead base, much less one where 2 enemy armies are sitting, 2 undead armies even, and mass towers, mass spirit towers at that base. So that's a terrible idea, so I advise against going in there. We don't, I ping yellow's expansion. At least at this expansion, there is only 2 spirit towers. There are 0 armies here, 0 production buildings, and no shop. So, and plus the Necropolis has only 1,500 hit points versus 2,000 from the Black Citadel. Again, and also the Necropolis doesn't attack like the Black Citadel does, or the Halls of Dead. So, much easier target, and we wipe it fairly quickly. And if they're going to try to defend either TPing in or coming in from behind, that's not really great for them. The positioning, you know, is very easy for us just to turn around. If they TP in, they're going to be stuck there with no town portal since there's no shop. Yellow TP's out because he's pretty scared. Honestly, if he would have stayed there, green and him could have probably done some damage to me. Now somebody else was actually trying to TP in, but they didn't get there. But again, it's you know, it's going to end up 2 versus 4. You know, maybe they kill like most of my army, even though I don't think so. With the level 5 and 6 Panda, they didn't have magic units at all. I can Cyclone all the fiends. I can go Crow form, you know, Fairy Fire against the Frost Worms. So they're really, you know, probably, I mean, obviously him town portaling out really messed up green, so more than it maybe could have. But anyway, green's hero, I don't know if he has silence, but a Dark Ranger actually is generally very effective against mass druids of Talon. I mean, mass casters in general, but especially mass druids of Talon, because the only dispel at that point I would have been in a position to really cast to stop or to deal with silence would be detonate from a wisp, and I want to say that also would deplenish the mana of the Druids of Talon. I'm actually not 100% there. I would say I'm like 85% sure that detonate also hits your allied heroes and units mana, depleting it. But anyway, that's going to cost me a wisp, and again, I didn't have wisp with my army, so yeah, level 2 and 3 silence would have been very effective versus my army should green have used it. It didn't. I never remember actually getting silenced, so I don't even know if he had silence, which you know, is probably a bad decision. The other thing about silence is in 4s, it gets, I mean, in general, it gets very powerful when the heroes are high level. But on the flip side, I guess the longer the game goes, the more chance the enemy will have some kind of dispel or like magic immune units that you can't. I mean, the only units that you can silence well, silence is going to do anything is mostly casters, and then something like Dragon Hawks maybe and stuff like that. But anyway, the main thing is in fours, you saw a lot of these armies didn't really have great dispel. You had blue. His dispel actually was a caster unit, adept and master level priest. Same for orange. His, the anti-magic unit that he had for dispelling again was priest. So you just hit the priests with all the other casters with silence, and they're not going to be able to dispel. So that's not a counter really to silence, unless you spread. You like have one priest like way off where you can do that. But again, assuming you don't dodge the silence with with any of your priests, then it's fine. And then with undead, it's a lot of times the undead players in fours and in general are either going to pick between getting some destroyers, getting some frostworms and fiends. Generally fiends are going to be the backbone of the undead army in fours and in general. But later in the game, a lot of times they will either add in frostworms, destroyers. Sometimes they mix them, but you really need a lot of resources for that to make sense. But yeah, if they don't make destroyers, then silence is really amazing. Against clusters of heroes, and that's the thing. Silence. On initiate level casters or level 1 heroes, the impact is and again the cooldown, or sorry, the duration, the area coverage for level like 1 silence is not super impressive. But once you hit level 2 and 3, the coverage is great. It lasts a longer amount of time, and at that point in the game, the hero spells are much more dangerous. Level 3 Breath of Fire, level 3 maybe Stormbolt, maybe Blizzard, maybe Shockwave, Death Coil, Nova, all the Impale, for the Panda, Drunken Haze, and then Breath of Fire. Together those are really strong. Ultimates, you can interrupt channeling ultimates. You can delay, if a hero just hits level 6, you pop them with silence. You might be able to delay that ultimate, if it's like Metamorphosis for the Demon Hunter, you delay that for a bit, stuff like that. So yeah, it's a really, it's a very effective skill actually in fours. The problem in like 1v1 and 2v2 is a little bit less caster heavy, I would say. That's one thing. And the other thing is the hero levels, with so many enemies, it's in bigger maps, it's generally easier to get your hero power leveled up, the Dark Ranger, and vice versa. The enemies, they can get their heroes leveled faster, sort of like free for all. So, you're stopping, potentially you're silencing, multiple level, 4, 5, 6 heroes, and so that's a bigger impact, doing that. So that's why I would say, silence is seemingly more effective in the bigger game types. Again, you've got more enemies that could mass casters. You've got more heroes. You've got a maximum number of enemy heroes of 12, whereas in 1v1 and 2v2, obviously 3 and 6 are the max, and even it's pretty common not to be up against 3 heroes for all the races. A lot of times the enemy will just get 2 heroes in 1v1 as opposed to 3. But even if they get the max, 3 versus 12, obviously that's, and even 6 versus 12 is a much, and again, not to say that in fours everybody's getting, they're always getting, 3 heroes apiece. But look here at the game. We've got red with 3, pink with 3, blue with 3. So yeah, on their team, it looked like they only had 1 player who gets 3 heroes. But a lot of times the undead players, it's sort of an oddball game where both undeads only got 1 hero. That seems really weird. Like, generally the undeads are going to get 2 and 3 heroes in fours. Like, at least the Lich second or something to go with the Death Knight. But anyway, at least for the Dark Ranger, I guess I can see wanting to get Charm or wanting to get, level 3 Silence. But it didn't even happen either. So, but anyway, I thought this game was pretty interesting. Again, it is very risky to take into massing one unit. I would say just even any kind of unit. You know, frostworms, for example. You know, you're doubling down on sort of the strengths and the weaknesses of whatever unit you're going for. So in my case, it was Master Druid of the Talon. So you can cyclone a ton, but if they get destroyers and or mass spellbreakers, and I run into those armies, and or mass like mortar teams with fragmentation shard and like attack upgrades, or maybe some AoE abilities. High level AoE is really strong as there's a talent as well. You know, any number of these things are going to be very, very effective against my Druids of Talon. At that point, there's not a lot of, you know, I had 3 Ancients of Wind. I guess I could switch to like mass Hippogriffs or mass Fairy Dragons or some mixture of those 3 units, Druids of Talon as well. I could have got an Ancient of War and maybe tried to get Hippogriff Riders. Could have got a Chimera Roost, tried to get Chimera, but again, I was sort of all in on the Cyclone idea, and if I didn't get much benefit out of that, you know, I ran into like mass Spellbreakers or, you know, level 3 Shockwave or, you know, Destroyers or whatever, you know, they could counter, and it would sort of be on my allies to sort of, you know, carry that game if it went that way. It would have taken a while for me to really to transition to anything else. I did add Fairy Dragons for the casters, not mass Fairy Dragons per se, but the casters and the Dragon Hawks, or not the Dragon Hawks, the Frostworms. But anyway, the other point is you're leaving your team wide open for like a mass rush in the beginning. You know, my base probably would have been very vulnerable. I mean, not as vulnerable as certain races. Elf is fairly resilient in the early game against certain types of rushes, but not having any tier 1, you know, no Ancients of War, no towers, you know, no tier 1 units, that leaves me very vulnerable, you know. And the tier 1 shop, the elf shop doesn't really offer much, so, you know, even getting a shop at tier 1, I don't have like Rite of Necromancy or anything like heal salves or clarity I mean, I have clarity potions, but no healing salves. You know, the elf base, you know, my base would have been vulnerable. My allies are also just as vulnerable, you know, if they attack them. You know, I don't have, the only thing I have is a level 1 Panda, which I was sort of harassing with. So, if the enemy would have just hardcore rushed, like, one of my allies on the top, spawning on the top, you know, I probably would have been out of position, you know, if, like, Orange didn't expand, like that, or even though he did, you know, I just get 3 peasant kills or whatever, and then you know, I have to maybe TP or run to the top. So that's not exactly great. I'm already damaged. I was at like 300 hit points. I'd used up most of my mana, and you know, even TPing, it's like, what do I really offer there? Not much. So I'm probably not even going to town portal at that stage, or I lose my hero like I did, and then I have to wait, revive him, and then even then TPing in with 100 mana, level 1 hero. I mean, it's not really that comforting, or not really that, you know, big of an assist to TP in there like that against, if they were massing, you know, doing a mass rush. So it leaves you very vulnerable. Again, it depends on, you know, what the enemy does, how skilled they are, anything from heroes, you know, certain heroes like a Demon Hunter against my Panda. If a Demon Hunter runs into my Panda somewhere out in the open, I'm just going to lose all my mana, and then, you know, then I'm not even casting Breath of Fires. You know, then I'm just a big, almost like a grunt. You know, I've got a big hero that's, you know, strength hero, whatever. But, so yeah, you know, these things, you know, that's the risk of going for certain types of, you know, aggressive teching, or even if you're not aggressive teching. I mean, if you're gonna, late game, if you're just gonna go all in, like on Frostworms, or Dragon Hawks, or Sorceresses, or, you know, Abominations, Knights, you know, all these units going all in is going to, you know, give you a ton, like for Frostworms, it's going to give you a ton of DPS. They have a lot of hit points. They're flying, so that's a benefit, you know, pretty mobile. Can fly over trees and stuff, are good against heavy armor towers, like, you know, unupgraded watchtowers, guard towers at any stage. The frost worms are going to be strong against those, especially with frost breath. Um, but really good anti-air, something like fairy dragons, mass fairy dragons, uh, probably mass Druza Talon in crow form would probably be good, especially if you get upgrades. Actually, crow form Druza Talons get the benefit of upgrades, of certain upgrades, attack and armor upgrades. And there's also the upgrade where they can cast Fairy Fire in crow form. So, and their DPS is really high in crow form, is what I'm saying. It's only air to air attack, but it's really high in its magic damage. So it gets a buff even more on light armor than a lot of other armor types. So, like against Frostworms, for example, crow form to the Talon are pretty decent. Now you do need a lot of them there as a 2-food unit. You're going to need to have equal numbers. It's not just like, oh, he can't attack me with fairy dragons, for example. Like fairy dragons against frostworms, the frostworms can't do anything to the fairy dragons. So if you've got 10 fairy dragons, it doesn't really matter how many frostworms he's got. The frostworms can't fight the fairy dragons. They'll just sit there. So while it's not like, oh, I can never go near the fairy dragons, you just can't stay there very long with frostworms, typically, and hope to win. So if you're like going to go for an expansion kill or hit and run on workers or something, you can stand in there and take some shots. Frostworms do have a ton of hit points, so and you can death coil them. So yeah, that's what I would sort of say about the strategy, about fast teching. Sometimes it's going to work, sometimes it's going to be terrible. And again, that can come down to luck, that can come down to skilled opponents, that can come down to bad allies. If I get pretty hard countered, sometimes it might take 2 armies, but if 2 armies control sort of make me ineffective, I like to say I try not to let that happen. At worst case scenario, they can make me avoid their armies, but I can still do stuff. But if they do manage to do that, and then I've got 1 or 2 allies who are poor players, which I wouldn't say is the case here. My allies looked pretty skilled all around there. We had lots of them expanding, making viable armies. Their late game armies, their hero choices, like Pink, hitting that heal spray was. Timing was amazing. The positioning was great. Really good teamwork there. So, I felt like there had a good team. I probably had the better teammates than the opponents. I would say. But anyway, if that's not the case, maybe the teams are a little unbalanced, or even if they're perfectly balanced, then if I get controlled, then somebody else is going to be potentially vulnerable and or have to carry the load more. And if they can't do it, then that's gonna the enemy's probably gonna pull away. They're probably gonna get some advantages and maybe get the win. So yeah, that's sort of the thought process there, the strategy of it all. It's one of the reasons why, especially if you're like a really strong player, but just in general, a lot of times it's if you get like your army gets completely wiped out, or there's like spans of like 5 minutes where you're running around but you're not really doing very much, that's going to be very bad for your team. A lot. And sometimes it's okay, like if you have an expansion and you're teching up, there's going to be times where you don't have the army to do stuff, or if you're like harassing, it doesn't look like you're getting kills, but maybe you're distracting the enemy, you're slowing down like expansions, you're delaying techs, enemies teching and stuff like that. That's not doing nothing. That's it may be more subtle, hard to sort of point out. Since you're not leveling, you're not killing enemy units. It's a little harder to value certain types of things, but it's it isn't nothing. And it sort of, if you have a good knowledge of the game, you can understand that. how to value it better. You know, where it might look like in the early game I was not doing anything in this game. I did get green to sort of stop creeping for a bit and go defend. I did kill a couple of workers at the expansion. I did make him, you know, sort of dance around his workers that were building. So I slowed his expansion a little bit. Now it wasn't an amazing amount of damage. I did end up losing my level 1 hero when yellow came in, but I was sort of distracting 3 players at different points in, you know, in that span. I was forcing them to defend. I saw what their heroes were. I saw what their armies were. I saw where they were. So, you know, that's some scouting information. I didn't really communicate it very well to the enemies, I don't think, or to my allies. But yeah, that's something. You know, that information is useful. The information that they expanded, you know, both blue and, blue and orange, you know, knew where they were expanding. I knew when they were expanding. I knew that they had 2 archmages. I knew they had a death knight. I knew they had a dark ranger. So yeah, I got to see like all of their heroes, all their first heroes. I got to see all of their armies at that point, snapshots, you know, of their armies. So that's, you know, getting the information is good. Getting the peasant kills, you know, sort of mitigates me losing a level 1 hero. 170 gold for the Panda versus, you know, 225 for 3 peasants. Plus, I guess, lost mining time for those peasants. You know, even without the mining time accounted for, you know, 225 is more than 170. The experience, I'm not sure what the level 1 hero experience gain is for killing it. So it's probably more than 3 peasants by a little, but yeah, you know, it's probably not that much, if any at all. So yeah, that wasn't doing nothing per se. But if you are, you know, if you are actually, you know, doing nothing, you know, you make an army that's already countered, and then you know, you're sort of having to run around, avoid stuff, not, you know, like you're trying to bash in mass air like Wind Riders against mass guard towers, watch towers, bat riders, you know, then you set yourself up to get easily countered. That's why certain armies are high risk, high reward, like Wind Riders. They have a lot of DPS. They're available at tier 2. I guess you could say 2.5 since you've got to get the bestiary, but you know, so they're available at a certain timing, but they're not tier 3. But they do a lot of damage, so they are fairly effective against certain armies. You know, armies with no anti-air, bases with no towers, you know, stuff like that. They can harass, they can creep well, but they are also very sort of one-dimensional. You know, they're high DPS, like glass cannon type units. You know, bat riders typically going to just dominate them. So, you know, the window for doing damage with Wind Riders is pretty small generally, unless you know, if you get a bunch of them, you maybe get Bloodlust, and then you're up against like Chimera or mass casters or mass huntresses or mass frostworms, even maybe mass hippogriff riders. You know, they're not really that. They're pretty good with the piercing damage against a lot of those. Now, if they dismount the hippogriff riders, then you're in a little bit of a bad spot. But you know, they're not terrible against those things. So, what, fairy dragons, if they mass fairy dragons. But yeah, you know, once bat riders are coming out, you know, or you know, hippogriffs, gargoyles, you know, fiends with web, you know, all these things, you know, you better be very careful not to get wiped, because it's hard to regroup after getting wiped. You know, with any race though, it's like, you know, if I lose like a level 4 or 5 hero, I lose like 80% of my units. Obviously that's you know, that's going to really mess up timings. It's going to really put you behind, unless you know, did an equal amount of damage to the opponents. You know, can very easily really mess stuff up. Like a lot of times with the, I'll sort of go into one tangent here before the end of this audio. A lot of times when I do the solo Archmage mass caster strategy, I have found one of the biggest sort of downfalls or risks with that strategy is getting like level 4 or 5 with the Archmage. and then like either losing my hero or really losing a battle by myself. Like if I lose like, you know, say 4 or 5 sorceresses, mostly losing my hero though is the big issue. Like if somehow I do end up losing that level 4 or 5 Archmage, it really ruins the timing, because I'm running around, typically at that point I'm running around with mass sorceresses, maybe a couple of breakers, but the enemy they will see that, and before I have polymorph, that army is particularly vulnerable to a lot of like tier 2 type armies. You know, Death Knight Lich Fiends, Raiders, Blade Master, Shadowhunter. A lot of armies are, you know, Mass Wind Riders. If I can't polymorph stuff, then there's a lot more armies that are very threatening to that type of army, of course. So, and the other thing is giving them a heads up, like, oh, this guy's got, you know, 6 sorceresses. It looks like he's just going to mass sorceresses, and he's got a depth level. He's probably going to try to get polymorph. You know, while I still don't really see that. I really don't see players massing polymorph as much as in 4s as sometimes I would expect, because it is one of the most amazing spells in the game. But the other, like in this audio I've been saying, massing one unit, even as something as strong as like Master Sorceresses, is a risk. You know, yes, polymorph is amazing, so massing it if they don't have Dispel is like, it's a game changer. If they can't Dispel it, just polymorph alone is a game changer. So the more you got, you know, the worse it is for them. So, and especially with Brilliance Aura level 2 and 3. So, but yeah, you know, you need mana for polymorph. So, you know, losing the Archmage at level 4 and 5 takes away Brilliance Aura. Losing Sorceresses, you know, when you rebuild them, they're not gonna, you know, they probably are gonna have less mana when they come out than the ones you did that were running around with your hero and stuff. And getting leveled up. You know, they're getting boosted mana pools as you get the upgrades. So yeah, and then when it comes time to use polymorph, you know, you might not have as many, you might not have as much mana as you would have, so you can't cast it as much. You know, you might not, if you get killed at level 4 or 5, you might not have your Archmage back when the enemies are pressing. You know, not being able to Town Portal. You know, all this stuff. And the other part, like I say, is the enemy seeing you massing sorceresses. You know, then they have a little bit of a window if they win a battle to get the counter to whatever you're doing. You know, see, okay, I need destroyers. Okay, I need spellbreakers. You know, or spirit walkers or whatever. You know, now a lot of times, a lot of players, especially with like spirit walkers and maybe destroyers, you know, that's, you know, it's like a coin flip whether they're going to get massed or, you know, gotten in decent numbers. But if they see that you're massing sorceresses, it probably ups the chance that at least one of the enemies is going to try to make a dedicated counter army to that. And if they don't, well, then they're just, you know, not really playing very smartly, because, like I said, polymorph is so amazing. If they don't sort of dedicate a decent amount of resources to countering that, getting, you know, like destroyers, like I say, or something, spellbreakers, if they don't have enough to counter polymorph, they can lose battles where they would have just rolled over you easily without polymorph. You know, Frostworms shut down with polymorph, Wind Riders shut down with polymorph, Chimera, Hippogriff Riders, Abominations, Knights, Tauren, Fiends, you know, you name it, anything without Magic Immunity is a good game. Grunts, Raiders, Kodo Beasts, you know, name any unit, you know, Mountain Giants without the resistant skin upgrade that they need, you know, Bears, you know, all these units, you know, 4 food units, 7 food unit, 3 food doesn't sound as amazing, but again, 3 food, 4 food, you know, 5 food for a Chimera. You know, shutting these things down with a 2 food unit, I mean, come on. And then with Brilliance Aura, you know, you between battles you're going to be refilling your mana, and you can just do it again and again and again, or even during battles, you know, you're going to be able to polymorph over and over and over. And as more sorceresses come, you know, they build fairly quickly, very cheap, 155 gold, I think, 2 food. You know, you're pumping those out, you know, boom, boom, boom. And then if if they find themselves in a battle that they can't run away from, and they don't have the counter to polymorph, well, that's probably game over. Everything else being close to equal, you know, knocking like one or even 1.5 or 2 armies down to, you know, maybe 10-20% damage output. That's huge. You know, and you can sort of, you know, you don't need like an 80 food army of sorceresses to be able to do that. You know, you can pull that off with like 50-60 food a lot of times. I mean, you know, getting to 60 food, it doesn't matter if you have 60 or 80 food, upkeep is the same. But to get up to 80 food, obviously it costs more than to just be at 60. But anyway, that's, you know, that's sort of the way it goes in the timing. You know, if my timing gets thrown off with this strategy, you know, I have to spend resources and time waiting for the Archmage to come back. I maybe don't get to level 5 as quickly as I want to for high level Brilliance Aura. You know, and then the enemy has a little bit more time to counter and a little bit more heads up, like, hey, Polymorph might be coming. Well, then, you know, then I can be looking at a harder late game, and, you know, just sort of snowballs, you know. Whereas I could have been like hitting at a certain timing, right when Polymorph comes online. There's, you know, very, very low chance that they have enough to counter it. You know, I can strike a huge blow. Whereas if I have to wait, you know, another 2 minutes, you know, to really get that going, you know, well then they might just have the counter already. So now it's like, well, you know, I'm not very effective there. I have to maybe avoid certain armies. And it's like, well, okay, what it really cuts down what our team can do. It cuts down what I can do for sure. And then, you know, past that, it's going to be like an uphill battle. Whereas before, they would be more reacting to me. You know, if they didn't have certain strategies like high level shockwave and catching me before I get polymorph, like I say, those things are pretty strong, you know, at those timings. So it's really ideal to, I mean, sort of not like obscure advice or anything, but avoid, with that type of strategy, you need to avoid battling them before you get polymorph, really committing, or running into certain types of armies. You know, really avoid that. Have like healing potion or talent portal, and make sure you do not lose your Archmage. You know, sure, it might suck to talent portal, or to run all the way across to cast invisible and run away or whatever, but it is very crucial for the timing of that strategy to really, you know, maximize your chance to win. You know, you really want to hit those timings, and you know, to reduce the chance that you will be countered. So yeah, that's what I will end this audio on. A little bit of a rant there on a totally different strategy, but not one that you've probably seen it before if you watched any number of these videos. It's a strategy I do like to do with human and fours. So yeah, this is ScryMind signing out.